On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon disaster changed the lives of millions living near the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the scientists who responded to the crisis. These are some of their stories, intimate portraits of research, innovation, discovery. I'm Hal Weiner, co-creator of Dispatches from the Gulf, a series of documentaries, short videos, and podcasts. Today, we join oceanographer Dr. Will Patterson, who is aboard a research vessel located 10 miles off the coast of Panama City, Florida. Dr. Patterson has a truly amazing story to tell us. It's about the invasion of alien predators that have reached epic proportions. But first he explains why the fisheries of the Gulf of Mexico are so fertile that they can provide 40% of all commercial seafood caught in the lower 48 states each year.
The region where we're sampling is in the northern Gulf of Mexico. This has been called the Fertile Crescent because we have the Mississippi River dumping enormous amounts of nutrients and fresh water onto the shelf. And so that makes this area very productive. Because of that, we have fisheries that are enormous and highly valuable.
Dr. Patterson and his team's ultimate goal is to determine the impact of the oil spill on reef fish living in the Gulf. Once Patterson's research vessel reaches a survey site, he lowers into the water an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle fitted with video cameras.
ROV is in the water at 10:05:41.
His colleague, Dr. Joe Tarnecki, controls the ROV while monitoring its location on a video screen.
So Joe will fly it from inside. Got it?
Got it. All right, we're at about 100 feet now.
How you doing, Joe?
Just approaching the bottom now. Yeah, it looks pretty here today. We should get some good footage.
There's a red snapper. And we just got it, scaled him with our lasers.
When the ROV is close enough, Joe aims 2 parallel laser beams at the fish. Called scaling, it's how the team determines the length of reef fish.
The lasers that we have are set at 10 centimeters apart, so that's about 4 inches. So when we go back, we can grab frames of the video, we can measure the distance between the 2 red dots, and then get an estimate of the true length of the fish. That's important because for many of these fish that we have on these coastal reefs, they're small young fish, less than 10 years old. And for many of these species, we can estimate their age from their length. We can also estimate the weight of the fish.
It's a great way for us to gain information about the fish without having to bring them up to the surface and potentially killing them.
There are 27 sites here that we've been studying now for about a decade. So we had a long time series of data before the oil spill, and now we've been revisiting them since the spill. And what we saw after the spill is that some of the large predators, like the jacks and groupers and snappers, their numbers were lower than what they had been pre-spill. And then 3 years after the spill, we saw a leveling off, and slowly over time, the communities have come back to what we saw before the spill. But if you have large snappers and groupers and jacks, which are able to swim long distances and move hundreds of kilometers, they could have left the region. If the food web was compromised or if they were sick because of oil, they could leave. But we do know that their numbers were lower, and in the past couple of years, their numbers have come back.
But then the team discovered an unexpected consequence of the oil spill. The fish showed profound physical changes.
There's lots of different ways to think about impact of oil. So one thing that we've been looking at is growth rates. And we've seen in the years after the spill that for a few of these species for which we have quite a bit of information, that they're smaller at age than they were before the spill. So just because their numbers are similar to what they were, doesn't mean that there's no chronic impacts in the system.
But then their investigation became even more complicated. When the team discovered that the reefs were invaded by extremely aggressive and deadly predators, lionfish.
Lionfish were first brought to the U.S. in the aquarium trade, and they were released in South Florida in the 1980s. and became successful invaders in that system. It's unknown whether it was hobbyists that dumped their aquaria or whether it was a facility that released lionfish, but they were here because of the aquarium trade. And then through the 90s and into the 2000s, they were found up through the Carolinas and as far north as New York. And then they invaded the Bahamas. Once they got into the Bahamas, they've then moved throughout the Caribbean. The first lionfish that showed up in the northern Gulf of Mexico was 2010.
The event quickly caught the attention of the news media.
Lurking beneath the clear blue waters of the Florida Keys is a beautiful but frightening fish. Poisonous, abundant, and with an appetite that won't quit.
They're called lionfish, and they're hard to miss, with bright stripes, big showy fins, and 13 sharp spines that scream, "Stay away."
Scientists are comparing the lionfish to a plague of locusts.
Dr. Patterson explains the magnitude of the crisis.
Their ability to adapt to this environment is troublesome. Lionfish are the most successful marine invaders that have been documented. Reasons for their success: they have spines that envenomate things that try to eat them. They're very voracious predators. They tend to herd the fish they're eating, and then they shoot jets of water at the prey, and the prey turns to look at the lionfish, and lionfish engulfs them. The potential natural predators in our system, the sharks, big groupers, and amberjacks, they've never seen a lionfish before. We've looked at thousands of reef fish stomachs over the past 4 years, and we've yet to see a lionfish in their stomachs. Another aspect of their biology that makes them successful is they grow very fast. They reach maturity in their first year of life, and they spawn multiple times in a given season, and their pelagic egg masses then enable them to be transported by oceanographic currents to new areas. So lionfish are probably going to be with us here from here on.
Clearly, the aggressive and territorial nature of lionfish, compounded by an already contaminated habitat, presents a major challenge to one of the most important marine ecosystems in the world. Today, thousands of scientists, oceanographers, chemists, engineers, biologists are all working together to develop newer and better ways to understand and ease the impact of oil spills. To learn more about their work, visit our website at dispatchesfromthegulf.com. Funding for this podcast was provided by a grant from the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative. And thanks for listening.